Most people will never see Antarctica. Fewer will try to cross it on skis, and almost no one, absolutely no one, will spend longer alone on that frozen continent than today's guest. Aaron Linsdau is an ordinary guy who once sat behind a desk designing embedded systems. But something in him wanted more challenge, more danger, more life, and so he quit. He trained, he saved, and he flew to the south to the edge of the earth. In December 2012, Aaron stepped off the plane at Hercules Inlet with 2 sleds, 82 days of food, and no one else in sight. Over the next 1,130 kilometres, he faced whiteouts so dense he couldn't tell where the sky ended and the ground began. Temperatures so low that butter, his main calorie source, froze solid, then went rancid before he could finish it. And silence so heavy it pressed on his ears. He didn't go for speed, he went for survival, and in doing so, he became the second American to ski alone from the Antarctic coast to the South Pole. And as his record still stands, the man who lasted the longest out there on his own. Since then, he's crossed Greenland solo, skied Yellowstone in the dead of winter, attempted Denali, and turned those lessons into books, films, and keynotes that push others towards their own edge. But this episode isn't about ice or mileage. It's about why an ordinary man said yes to the impossible and how you can too. This is why you think you could do that. And this is Aaron Linsdau. Aaron, welcome.
Hi, Sam. Thank you very much for having me on.
Mate, I'm really looking forward to this because I find your story so intriguing. From the outside, it looked like you had it all. You had a stable career, a clear path, but there's a point in your story where ordinary life perhaps started to feel too small. And for you, that led to the coldest, emptiest, loneliest place on the planet. Before we jump into some of your amazing adventures, take us back to San Diego. What was childhood like growing up?
Sure. Growing up in San Diego, I grew up in South San Diego in a community called San Ysidro. And I went to Southwest High, the most southwesterly high school in America, in the continental states. And unfortunately, just due to proximity of where it is, it wasn't the best academic environment. So we did the best that we could with what we had, but there were certainly some challenges that my friends and I faced. As we went through, we actually became good at volleyball. And so our coach called us the people who played well, but also studied hard. And that really set a structure in my mind, but also the Boy Scout program, now called the Scouting program, also gave me the outdoor and wherewithal because I'm also an Eagle Scout. I'm a recipient of the National Eagle Scout Award in the United States. And those things have really set the course for my life. I mean, my parents were super adventurous. I mean, my dad, he he always jokes that he grew up and he literally lived, when people talk about a tar paper shack, he and his family, when he was growing up, that's what they had sometimes. He talks about the crank phone, how he spent time in a fire tower with his mom, my grandmother, literally watching for fires. On my mom's side, she came from a family who were Japanese, and my grandfather was actually in the internment camps in Poston during World War II. So definitely in the family, there's definitely no lack of adversity. I was originally born in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, a super famous ski town, and lived there, I think, was it 7 years or thereabouts. And one winter, it got to like minus 55 degrees Celsius. And my parents said, okay, that's enough. And they moved my brother and I down to San Diego, about the best climate on the earth, from so I've been told. So from going from wild history and family, very modest upbringing, we didn't have a lot of money at all. I mean, doing these expeditions is insanely expensive. And people ask, oh, did you come for money and all that? Like, oh, no. In American English, we call it pulling yourself up by your bootstraps.
So, Aaron, with your upbringing, there's obviously 2 parts here. There's your adventurous parents and also the Eagle Scout or the scouting movement. Which of those do you think shaped you the most?
Definitely the scouting movement. It gave me the vision of leadership, how to interact with people, had to make lots of mistakes in a relatively contained environment where the consequences weren't so bad that anybody died or anything horrible like that. And only about 2% of the youths who go through the program ever make Eagle Scout. So it's a
And
big
explain what Eagle Scout
distilling.
is.
Sure. So Eagle Scout is the highest award you can earn in the scouting program. And it used to be boys, now it's boys and girls can also earn the Eagle Scout award. But you have to earn merit badges, you have to go through programs, and to complete the Eagle Scout award, you have to do a project. And the project is the delineator between the scouts who succeed and who don't make it.
So you had an early life of adventure with the scouting movement, living in Jackson Hole, uh, but you worked 20 years in embedded systems engineering. Now, explain what that is.
Yeah. So all the computers that run aircraft, that run air traffic control, that are in your microwave, your car, that run trains, the backbone of the internet. It's all the computer stuff that isn't on your phone and your desktop or your laptop. Just to give you a tiny snippet, the actual desktop and laptop world is only about 2% of the total microprocessors used in the world. Everything else that you interact with has a microcontroller, and I wrote software for night vision systems for the Apache gunship, water quality testing, space systems, lots of military contracting, and some of my software still flies around the world in military theaters.
Oh, that's pretty cool. It doesn't sound like it's a very adventurous life compared to how you grew up. So, did adventure live quietly in the background or did it just come out of nowhere?
It definitely lived quiet in the background. Now, growing up through the scouting program, we did hiking and camping, but nothing too crazy. I mean, we had a scout troop in San Diego, and it's not like we were going to Minnesota or Wyoming or Alaska to do camping and things like that. But in my late 20s, thought, it's been a long time since I'd gone camping. Why don't I do something really interesting? So I went on a backpacking trip into the Sierras in California and had a great time. And I thought, I want to get back into this. And so I slowly evolved into, okay, how much farther can I go? What can I do in a weekend? I mean, I got to the point where I could drive from San Diego in the border with California, Mexico, to Central California in Sequoia National Park. I could hike 40 miles, 60 kilometers in a weekend, Saturday to Sunday, and then I would drive back the 6 hours and be back to work. That was my max. I mean, I literally didn't have any more time. My best backpack, I think it was 80 miles or 120 kilometers. Did that in 3.5 days. So I was really learning to push myself, and then I thought I want to go somewhere bigger, and that's when I used to get the Backpacker magazine, and they had a top 10 in the world backpack trips, and one of the top was the Arctic Circle Trail in Greenland. And I thought, oh hey, now this was way before smartphones and everything, so you really had to do it on your own. I had to buy maps once I got to Greenland, and I spent 10 days crossing the Greenland tundra by myself, 100 miles or 160 kilometers, completely alone, no communication. If something would have happened to me, I would have been a very permanent resident.
That's absolutely amazing. Now, was there a lot of satisfaction in stepping outside your comfort zone that you got from all of this?
Well, yeah. I mean, I didn't just go to Greenland on a wing out. That would have been a huge mistake because I went there late September, early October, and that's crazy late in the season. That's kind of dangerous in the Arctic. I probably wouldn't do it again, but but I started out small, trying to okay, let's do a little winter camping with my brother overnight. With the car completely contained, we froze. It was terrible. But I thought, hey, you know what? Okay, we survived, didn't get frostbite. Let me push my limit a little bit. Because that's one thing I see big mistakes people make in polar expeditions. One of my sponsors, him and his wife tried to go ski the same trip I did, and his wife had never cross country skied ever. They made it about maybe 100 kilometers and they quit. Thank goodness they would have gotten severely injured or worse. So these things have to develop and evolve over time. You don't want to just go out and, for instance, I've hiked across the Grand Canyon in 24 hours and back. So from the South Rim down to the North Rim and back, it's a round trip of 50 miles or about 80 kilometers. Huge elevation gain, and over 24 hours, no sleep or anything. But I didn't start off with that. That would have been a mistake. I knew where my limit was. I knew what my capabilities were.
So, one of the things, Aaron, that I see recurring with all of my guests on here who basically ordinary people who come on and do batshit crazy stuff and say yes to the impossible, you've already established this habit of stacking adventure on top of adventure. And one of my favorite sayings is when you get to the top of your mountain, find a bigger mountain. Now, I want to jump into your South Pole expedition because this is what I call batshit crazy. Training for the South Pole, it's not like training for a marathon. You can't just go out and do a few long weekends and show up at the start line. You're preparing for something that could potentially kill you, not once, but in 100 small ways along that journey. So, firstly, why Antarctica and why solo ski from Hercules Inlet to the South Pole?
Like a lot of my expeditions and travels, they always start as a kernel of, oh, hey, I want to do something small. And then I start to read into it, and it grows and grows until it becomes this literal monster that consumes my life. And that's not saying it's a bad thing. It's just so many things of, you only are restricted by your own vision and your own inability or energy to do things, period. If you really have the vision to do something, maybe you have a disability. I worked with this author, and he published a book called Defying Limits. And people literally who have no arms, no legs, still doing the craziest things ever. And so that really inspired me. That not nowadays, like, just because you don't have some ability. I mean, I have asthma, I have bad allergies. I am the worst candidate ever to do something like this. I mean, yeah, you wouldn't call him up like, oh, yeah, let's get a guy who has asthma and go ski across a continent or something. But I did multiple expeditions across Yellowstone National Park in the United States in winter. The first year it got to minus 40 degrees Celsius and Fahrenheit. My plastic cereal bowl shattered like glass. And so, yeah, I literally, and I was just tapping my cereal out. My cereal in the morning literally froze as I ate it. So I was literally eating crunchy ice crystals in my granola. And so the process and psychology is this is, don't think, oh, I'm going to go do this. But for me, I had the genesis of, hey, I can go to Greenland. I'm confident about this. But in around 2000, oh gosh, was it 2001, 2002? There was an article in National Geographic, and it was about Antarctica. And as a young kid, I loved Star Wars, Star Trek. The idea of going to an alien planet just completely enraptured me. But when I saw that article in National Geographic, the interior of Antarctica literally looks like an alien planet. If your viewers are familiar with the movie Empire Strikes Back in the original Star Wars series, that planet actually exists, and it's called Antarctica.
That's crazy. Now, was there a specific moment where you decided to leave your job and do this full time?
Yeah, the stress was starting to stack up, and this was during the recovery from the financial crisis in 2008, and just over time, I was not being as much challenged, even though I was a senior staff engineer. I could do all the things. I used to write what's called bare metal software. I wrote my own operating systems. I loaded them on processors. I ran computer systems, everything. I mean, when you talk to programmers, you say, "Oh, bare metal," they're like shocked. If you're in that world, you know it's super exotic. But I'd done it so long, it honestly it wasn't that challenging anymore. I knew exactly what to do. I knew what the plan was, and I could crank it out. But I started to become listless and say, "Hey, what else is out there?" And that was the genesis of, okay, let's see what else I can do.
So, how do you even begin prepping for something like this? It's physically, mentally, and also financially. This is huge. How did you do all that?
Starting way back, I didn't have the vision that I was going to go this far, honestly. I shame to admit some people have this vision, "Oh, I'm gonna go do all this." It was incremental because until, Sam, as you said, until you stand on that next summit, you can't see the summit above that. It's just a natural thing. Like in Grand Teton National Park in, near Jackson Hole, there is a summit called Disappointment Summit, and you climb up it, and there's this huge chasm between there and Grand Teton, but you really can't see it until you get to the top. And you realize, oh my gosh, this is incredible. But then you look up and I mean, something's towering 2 kilometers over your head. And all of a sudden you say, wow. But until you do the incremental challenges, it's too difficult mentally and physically to just jump into that next thing. I mean, I would never recommend just going and skiing across Antarctica. There was a lawyer in Colorado years ago who contacted me. He had, and he wanted to do this expedition. He had never done a long distance cold weather expedition. He'd done some other crazy stuff, but not like that, cold and not by himself. He has a wife, he has a couple of young children, and I warned him, you better go out and do like a Yellowstone trip or something. 10 days completely by yourself. Because it's not just the physical aspect, the mental aspect is huge. Like the woman who wrote the forward in my book, Hannah McKeon, she's got the world record for the number of skis to the South Pole, like probably 10, 12. I don't even know. It's been forever. And she said unequivocally, this thing is mental. As long as you don't get hurt and you can physically hold it together, it's probably 60 or 70% mental. People say that. I can 100% guarantee that is truth.
There's obviously a recurring theme here of just cold adventure. What is it about cold that attracts you to the adventures that you do?
The isolation, the severity of the risk, and I'm not an adrenaline junkie at all. I mean, I'm not doing wingsuit flying or parajumping or whatever, but the quietness of the experience, it can always you can travel over land that you simply can't travel over in the summer, and it's not a thematic thing that's absolute. It's just far more challenging because I've done tons and tons of backpacking, thousands of miles of backpacking over my life in the summer and in the shoulder months, and that's no problem. But the quiet of the winter, when you're traveling through winter landscapes, there's nothing that can be hidden. When an animal tracks through, assuming there's not wind or a storm, there's always a story in that snow. It's not like somewhere where animals could track through and you have no clue they were there. But in the winter, I remember my last expedition with my friend Terry Williams. We wrote the book Two Friends and a Polar Bear about our Greenland expedition. And that last winter expedition we did in Yellowstone, we heard wolves howling at midnight, literally out of a horror novel or a thriller novel. And we heard them closer and closer. I'm like, well, we've got a shovel and we got some bear spray. That wouldn't have worked against wolves, but thank goodness nothing happened. The next morning, when we got out of our tent, they had completely laid around our tent, slept there. I mean, we were surrounded by wolves all night. I mean, that was such a surreal experience.
It does sound like a horror film, that one. Now, tell me, what is the skill set that brings everything together? I always like to, in my mind, picture everything as a Venn diagram. In 2019, I attempted to swim the English Channel in winter. The only person on the planet who's ever tried to do that. And my skill set there was, well, I've swum the English Channel, I've done an ice mile, so I'm good in cold water, and I'm a civil engineer, so I'm good at data analytics. And I knew that start of December, the water temp was going to be about 12.5 degrees. And those three things came together as my, I can't believe you just reacted to 12.5 degrees.
Water is 1,000 times more conductive than air.
Oh, especially when you're only in a pair of Speedos. So what was your Venn diagram, your skill set that brought everything together to decide to go and do Antarctica?
The engineering aspect was actually a big deal because even on this expedition, I brought a little multimeter so I could measure the voltage of my solar panels. I figured out that in extreme weather, in extreme wind, I couldn't put my solar panels out because they would get destroyed. And so what I did is I used my electronic kit, put my solar panels in between the tent and then the outside shell. And if I ran them in parallel, all this electrical engineering stuff, I could actually keep those solar panels safe even when it was 80-kilometer winds outside and charge my kit. So things like that, the engineering problem aspect is huge, probably more than anything else. Because I broke my shovel on my Antarctic expedition. That forced me to have to kneel down. I frostbit my knees a little bit, and I eventually figured out how to reattach the shovel to the handle, and I continued on. But the ability to say, okay, this is the pile of junk I have, like the Apollo 13 uh, transit to the moon, where okay, this is all the stuff they have. Can you still live off of it? I love that. An absolute challenge of okay, here's a pile of junk. Try and stay alive. But then the physical aspect too of how far can one push oneself until you just simply collapse and your body gives up. And I always love pushing that. And of course, now I'm in my early 50s. That limit is limit is a little bit tighter than it used to be, which now that's just how it is. But the aspect of attitude of realizing Ernest Shackleton best said of ultimately problems are just things to be overcome. And if you can do that, you at least have a fighting chance.
I love how you bring all the nerd into it. And I think that today's discussion, you might inspire a world of engineers to go out and seek adventure. But what was the reaction from your friends and family when you told them that you're going to ski to the South Pole and back?
Ooh, that's a touchy subject, actually. Unequivocally negative. So, I mean, and that sounds terrible, right? I mean, I don't want to bash on my family, my friends, and my loved ones, but the natural human reaction for people that you love when somebody's going to do something risky is to discourage the person from doing it. And it's a natural reaction. And ultimately, I appreciate it in retrospect. But at the time, it was pretty crushing because people would tell me, why would you want to do that? It's dangerous. It's cold. It's unbelievably expensive. I mean, US dollars at the time, $100,000 to just even show up. And that wasn't the kit. That wasn't the training. That wasn't the travel. Uh, yeah, it was super hard to deal with. But I had a phone call with my grandfather, and he was the one that was in the internment camp in World War II. And he told me he was 83 at the time. And he told me, Aaron, just remember when you get to my age, the most exciting thing, assuming you don't fall asleep in front of the couch, is if you can go to the bathroom today. Now, I mean, it's a bit coarse, but once you get to your 80s, you just kind of stop caring. And he said, look, if you're going to go, you better go because there's a day that will come when you simply can't do it anymore. And that's it. You will never be able to return. And so it's not to be wing out reckless and, oh, yeah, let's go jump off cliffs and hope we survive, but build up the skills, the physical ability, and the wherewithal and the mental fortitude, and at least you have a shot. But the one person that made it possible emotionally was my grandfather, and he's since passed, unfortunately. But that Japanese man, I mean, he grew up in Indio in the Southern California desert. The him and his family had a farm out there. They had a produce store in Watts, which got destroyed in the '60s in the Los Angeles Watts riots. I mean, they've been through some ringers. So that vision of hey, I've been through it all, go for it was huge. That was massive. So if you as your listener decide, hey, I want to do this, do not get discouraged when people are not all cheerleading for you because it's a natural reaction. People you love want to defend you.
Well, I think the most important point there, Aaron, is that you are your own greatest cheerleader. And one of the greatest pieces of passage that I think I've ever read is The Man in the Arena by Teddy Roosevelt, where, and you're probably familiar with it, I think it's a great piece of prose, where until you are in the arena, when you're that person in the arena fighting and being the person on the adventures, it's then that anybody who has not been in the arena doesn't really have the right to comment, to criticize, and those are the people that you can then disregard what they say. Now, in any grand adventure, there's a real gap between dream and reality. And Antarctica, I can assume that hits really fast. The cold, the endless white. So tell me about the first time that you realized that this might not go as planned. Describe day one on the ice. What's running through your mind?
Oh, the 24-hour sun when I was dropped off after I arrived in Antarctica. I was there for a couple days until I was able to get flown out to my starting location. And just having 24-hour sun was a mind bender because it's very easy to get disoriented when you wake up at 3 a.m. to relieve yourself. That sun wakes you up and it immediately becomes a mental drain because if you don't manage that, it will wipe you out because you think, oh, I need to stay up, I need to keep going. Actually, managing yourself and giving yourself enough time to rest. The human body simply needs time to rest. You cannot go all out. And so I forced myself in a very military regimen to wake up at 6 a.m., start skiing at 9 a.m., finish skiing at 6 p.m. at night, and then I'm in bed completely and sleeping by 10 p.m. If I pushed it much past that, I could handle it for a few days, but I'd fall apart. And so immediately, as soon as the aircraft dropped me off, there was a storm coming in, 40-kilometer winds. And as that aircraft took off, as a motivational speaker, this is my opening story of I was 100% abandoned on the edge of Antarctica. I might as well have been on Mars other than being able to breathe. I mean, just that plane leaving and me doing a 360 walk around like Tom Hanks in Castaway. Of I yelled hello and there was no response. There were no animals. There's not even microbes. I am literally on an alien planet.
Wow. Now, you call this the longest duration solo South Pole expedition in history.
Yes.
82 days out there solo on your own. Was that intentional or was it just the way events unfolded?
Oh, yeah, that was not intentional. My original plan was to round trip. There was three guys who did actually do the round trip. Alexander Game did it solo, and then a duo from Australia, and their names are Cass and Jonesy. That's what they call themselves. And I was hoping to recreate that, but on flying down from Los Angeles down to Chile and then on to Antarctica, I got a lung infection. I developed bronchitis. I coughed up blood. I was badly sick. Thank goodness I had antibiotics with me, but that completely ruined my chances of round tripping. It was just, I would ski for 10 minutes and then double over like I'd never worked out a day in my life. And the emotional crush of, oh my gosh, I'm not making the miles. What's going on? Because the air is so dry in Antarctica, you just constantly cough. It's just how it works. But I didn't completely convolve that with, hey, I'm not feeling great. What's going on? Until I started coughing up blood. And I'm like, oh, dear Lord. So that's when things really settled in. And that was the day 16 or thereabouts, somewhere around there.
Wow. So really early on then, you're having to carry all of your stores, all of your food, sleeping arrangements, everything like that. What was the weight of the sleds that you were pulling?
The total weight was about 320 pounds or 160 kilos. I had all my supplies. I had to have food for 90 days. I carried 70 pounds or 35 kilos of butter alone just to eat and have enough energy. That always gets people. I actually do that on stage as a speaker. I literally have a brick of butter and I take a couple chomps out of it just to show that, yeah, this is legitimate. So I had telecommunication gear, uh, two satellite phones, backup, a military transponder, only one tent, lots of backup supplies, two stoves. two of everything, because it's very common for people to have their stoves fail on these expeditions. And the moment your stove fails, you can't make water and you won't last but maybe 2, maybe 3 days. So, I mean, that's a critical life support system.
Let's talk about the butter because I find that a little bit intriguing. Firstly, your butter froze, but then it went rancid. It was your main calorie source, the main source of your fuel. Um, Take us to that moment when you realize that your butter has gone rancid. What did that do to your morale and your energy?
Wow. Yeah, that was pretty crushing because the the past couple days before I came to that realization, every time I bought Kerry Gold butter as the main bricks, so they're whatever they are, half a pound and maybe a quarter kilo, and I would simply just break up half one of those bricks, mix it into my cereal, eat. But I started to feel a little bit queasy, and then through the day I would eat the other chunk of the butter, and I just wasn't feeling great. And then one day, in several days into this, I was sitting down eating and I almost vomited. I mean, I was like, "Oh my gosh, what is wrong?" And so in that kind of cold, your sense of smelling or sense of smell and taste completely goes away. So I literally had to jam that butter under my nose and take a real strong sniff, and I can smell it had gone completely off. It had gone fully rancid. And at that moment, I was like, "Oh my gosh, I've been low grade food poisoning myself for over a week." And involuntarily, of course, no one would ever choose to do that. And at that moment, I realized I'm going to lose more than half my calories because I can't consume it. I checked many bricks of butter, and the same thing happened because in Antarctica, when the wind stops, even though the air is minus 40 degrees, the solar radiation is so intense there, it actually melts stuff. It melted my biscuits, my cookies. And I didn't foresee that. And there was no solution to it. So it was 100% loss.
So you obviously can't have a backup to your food stores. What did you do?
I simply left the butter be and ate the food I had left. So basically, whatever I was eating, 6,000 calories, now it was down to maybe 2,500. I was pretty much starving every day. There's nothing to do. I mean, I was 100% committed to the expedition financially. I mean, I used every dime I literally had to do this. So if I said, "Hey, quit, call for an emergency evacuation," uh, I would never return. It's just it was too expensive, too much of an operation. So I was like, "Well, I can always be hungry." I lost 15 kilos or 30 pounds on that trip, and not intentionally. If anybody ever needs a weight loss program, I've got a great one.
Scared of the South Pole. Now, when you're getting in the second half of the expedition and your food stores are low, you're effectively starving yourself. You've more than halved your rations for every single day. How many miles were you doing?
Once things leveled out, I was on average 10 to 12 miles a day, or about 16 to 18 kilometers a day.
So, what did you focus on then? Because the whole challenge is so overwhelming. I'm going to ski to the South Pole. How do you get up every single day and go out?
I treated it as though until I arrived at the South Pole, I wasn't able to go home. And I knew this was probably a once in a lifetime experience. And so the joy and the challenge of doing it every day, because I had to be the cook, the commander, the navigator, the first aid medic, the repairman, everything. But as I'm skiing along, I'm having to navigate by compass the whole time. And a lot of Antarctica is pretty featureless. So if I didn't focus on an ice lump on the horizon and I looked away even for a fraction of a second, I would lose it. And when you wander 10 or 15 or 20 degrees off, it adds a huge amount of distance to the travel. So being absolutely obsessed of once I took a sighting and looked at an object, just basically a lump of ice on the horizon, I had to focus on it 100%. Now, one third of my days were 100% whiteout, meaning I couldn't see anything but my skis and my sled. It felt out like I was floating in white space. I mean, I would fall over and I wouldn't know it until the ground literally hit me in the head because it's so disorienting. And I learned and developed a technique where I would ski, let's say 60 ski steps, and then I would course correct as I was skiing. And I developed that technique to where I can keep on track pretty well. I use the same technique in Greenland with my friend who's a doctor, and it took him the entire trip to learn the technique. But with total concentration, I didn't have to stop and reorient because there was nothing to see. I mean, I could see my compass, but I might as well have been blind. And so I was able to navigate across the continent and across Greenland using that technique, but I had to develop it. And it really messes with your mind.
I could imagine. What's the sound and the feeling of being alone that long?
Oh, it's y- if you ever remember your in America we have call it elementary school, or for you guys primary school. When you were 10 years old, do you remember your teacher, the person who sat next to you in the desk? Those moments just appeared to me out of nowhere. I mean, one time a couple people who were experienced warned me I would have a out of body experience, and I did. Right around Christmas, Christmas Eve, I literally envisioned myself in my dad's church. Like I was fully there, hearing hymns being sung with the Christmas candles, everything. And then a few months later, I snapped back to reality, and there I was. And I said, "Nah, that'll never happen to me." Oh, I was wrong.
Do you feel that you're hallucinating in that moment or you just had flashbacks of memories?
That one was a 100% hallucination. I'm a pretty solid person, but in the absence of stimulation where you can only see white, or if there's a clear sky, white and blue, your brain just starts making stuff up. I started seeing colored globs in the snow, bright greens, deep reds. I mean, they're not there, but I would start seeing amorphous shapes because my brain was just trying to latch onto something. And I'm not doing, mushrooms or some crazy thing like that. It's just that the human brain requires a certain level of stimulation, and when it's not there, it starts to make stuff up. I heard things. I got scared by my own shadow. I have to I hate to admit that, but I'm skiing along, but as the sun's swinging around behind me, eventually I see this motion to my left and I yell, "Oh my gosh." And it was simply my shadow because there's no one else out there. There are no animals, no birds. I mean, nothing. I mean, I would look up and I thought I'd see ravens in the sky. They weren't there.
With these hallucinations, did it bring a sense of relief, a break from the monotony of white?
Oh, yeah, it was actually pretty entertaining because I knew subconsciously it was a constant battle because I talked about this in my book Antarctic Tears, that it was a nonstop battle with my subconscious self and my conscious self. My subconscious self would literally make my hair hurt. I mean, of course, that's not possible because otherwise you couldn't get a haircut. But it would literally, the brainstem comes up with any excuse to stop you. And it messes with what's called your reticular activating system that filters out the world. And it starts injecting the craziest things. My hair would itch, it would hurt, my thighs would hurt. I mean, just I would start hearing things. And then to test it, I would stop and rest for a moment, and all that effect went away. And so I realized, oh, my subconscious and my body is trying to give me any excuse to quit. It will make up any reason, just like what happened with that lawyer. He only made it halfway and then he got evacuated because and I speculate because his blog got kind of fuzzy and then I didn't hear from him after. But knowing that the mental game is going to mess you up, once you're conscious of that and you know that, hey, this is just going to mess with your head a lot, and you know that's going to happen, it's way easier to deal with. I mean, same thing with your swim, right?
Yeah, it's certainly you get to a certain point where your mind's just starting to really tell you to stop. Now, in this expedition, you're going for 82 days. Was there a point in that where you thought, I might not make it?
I don't believe so. I wrote about that in my book quite extensively, and I do not remember saying, "Hey, I'm going to quit." When I was first making terrible distance, I had a very bad feeling, but I had 3 months to come up with something, and I knew right at the beginning, the first couple days, the snow was several meters deep. Normally in Antarctica, there's only about 1 inch of snow at most. But right near the coast, because of the mountain range, the snow swirls off the mountains and it piles up. So I would ski maybe 50 or 100 feet, maybe 20 meters, and my sleds would literally disappear into the snow. I would have to turn around, I would have to ski back, lift them up, and each one was 160 pounds or about 80 kilos. This is not easy. And then I would have to lift them out of the snow, and I would fall down, and my arm would bury into the snow. And then I would have to ski forward, plow another 100, 200 feet, maybe 50 meters, and the same thing would happen. I had to do this for 5 days. I mean, I was only making 2 miles or 3 kilometers a day. I mean, it is the ultimate willpower test of, I know I will get through this, but that was the big first test of, and I knew this happened to other people. And so I knew eventually I will clear it, but I can't give up. I just have to keep clawing along.
It's interesting, Aaron, when we start out on anything, whether it's a fitness regime or a new job or starting a new company, the first part is always the hardest. But if we keep our eyes on what the final goal is, what the prize is, putting up with that early part of it's slow, it's hard, I feel really uncomfortable, I might quit. It'd be easier if I just went and sat on the couch. It's amazing when you have that goal and that vision of what you want to achieve, how you can get through those early days so much better. Now, 82 days, you finally make it to the South Pole. Explain to me that moment when you get to the South Pole.
It was one of the most spectacular moments of my life and also one of the saddest moments of my life. And that really messes with people like, oh, that's terrible. Like, oh, okay, here's the reality. I had dedicated a decade of my life and every financial penny that I had to making this expedition. I reached the South Pole. I skied up. I touched it's a literal candy cane stripe pole. I mean, it's really neat. And then I skied over to the true geographic GPS 90 degrees. And it was super exciting. But I realized my odyssey was over. That was simply it. There wasn't enough time to ski back. I had to call for a pickup flight in a couple days, and I got to enjoy exploring the South Pole Station. I got toured around. I mean, it was a great experience. There's a couple guys that came out and met with me because they were following my expedition. Jeffrey Dunnenfeld, if you're ever listening, thank you so much for being a friend. He took pictures. It was great, and I loved the experience. But I mean, it was gray, ultra cold. I had lost a huge amount of weight, so I couldn't stay warm anymore. I only weighed 140 pounds, so maybe 70 kilos. And on a 6 foot frame or 183 centimeters, I was very thin. I mean, there wasn't a lot left of me. I looked like a refugee. And so it was a most incredible moment. I skied around, I looked and enjoyed the moment, but I knew this part of my life was over. An entire decade of poking and prodding and working on it. And then, like, wow, what in the world do I do now? I mean, I didn't have a vision of writing books, starting a YouTube channel, becoming a filmmaker, having a show on Amazon. I mean, I learned filmmaking from my dad. He was a documentary guy, but I never had the vision of, hey, I'll just go back to engineering. Instead, I became a writer. I've written 43 books. I've got a show on Amazon, got 4 different YouTube channels. I'm learning violin and piano. I've just started writing fiction to kind of fictionalize my adventures in a thriller sort of format. And I've been super blessed with by making huge sacrifices to put myself in a place where I might have the chance to do something super grand. And now I'm a motivational speaker. People contact me to bring me on to share my story, because when I stand in front of an audience, people look at me and I jokingly say, "Do I look like the hulking guy who could haul a refrigerator across a continent?" And of course, adults don't admit it. And I say, "It's okay. You can shake your head no." And it gets a good laugh. But I just don't look like that guy. I mean, the lady from Iceland, Vilberg Gossetir, she was the first person the same year I did to ski from the coast to the South Pole. I mean, she's a slight woman. She's maybe like 5'2". I don't know. I mean, maybe 140 centimeters, whatever that is. And she did it too. And it was a mental game and it changed her life as well. But she spent probably a decade building herself up there as well.
It's interesting, Aaron. A lot of my past guests are ordinary people. If you walk down the street, you would not believe that that guy has skied to the South Pole. One of my past guests, Lisa Blair, 5'2", holds the record for sailing solo around Antarctica, and also a tragic event where she was dismasted and having to make life or death decisions. But even one of my other guests, Jared Gossens, a blind athlete who decided one day that he was going to climb Mount Everest. And he got to about 8,300 meters, and listeners can go back and listen to that interview with Jared Gossens because it's absolutely fascinating. But one of the things I asked him was, what does Everest smell like? Does it have a smell? Now, how about the South Pole? Does Antarctica have a smell?
No, no, there's no sound, there's no smell, there's no microbes. It's as lifeless as you can possibly get on Earth because nothing can survive there. There's nothing to consume. The actual South Pole Station, when I got in there, it had this antiseptic sort of smell because everybody's walking around in a hoodie or a jumper. And you only get to shower maybe once a week because they don't have it's a supply issue. But the actual smell, other than me, I mean, I wore wool clothing all the time and I never showered. I mean, that was impossible. The best I could do was I would have Earl Grey or chamomile tea, and I would use that to scrub my body down. It was a little bit chilly, but it worked as a sponge. So that's about the best I can do is literally wipe myself with a half frozen tea bag to try and stay clean.
So everything you've done from San Diego to the South Pole, it comes down to a single decision to try, which brings me to the question I ask every guest, Aaron. Standing at Hercules Inlet on day one, looking out at that white horizon, why did you think you could do that?
Oh gosh, that was so thrilling to actually see the coast, see the mountain range in there. Why did I believe I do it or I could do it? Because I'd done so many other trips that it was. I mean, it was a substantial expense and expanse. But when I'd skied the first time across Yellowstone National Park, I I mean, it was so rough facing wind. I had to ski at night for 4 or 5 hours to make the distance. I froze. No frostbite, but it was brutal. The snow would blow directly in my face, so the headlamp was very disorienting. And I almost quit. I was like, "Oh my gosh." But I brought a journal, one of those write in the rain journals. I had one of those space pens so I could write upside down at -40 and all this crazy stuff. And I started writing about my experience that night in the morning. And as I wrote it out, I realized, well, I'm not injured. I still have 9 days to go and 11 days of food. Uh, there's nothing wrong with me. And I learned as soon as I got in my tent, that mental pressure just completely dissipated like a breeze. And once I realized, hey, once I get in my home being a tent, and I collected myself, I went from, gosh, this is super rough to, they'll be fine. No problem. Because I always told myself that if I go home and I'm laying in my bed, the only thing I will think about is, dude, why didn't you keep going? I mean, now I've turned back on plenty of mountains. I mean, I've attempted climbing Denali solo 5 times. I had a climb on the Brighthorn and Zermatt, but My legs are so sore I couldn't complete the climb of the Matterhorn, and that's okay. I mean, the last 2 times I was in Denali, this year and the year before. This year the crevasses were so bad I didn't push far at all. Last year, 2024, I fell in several crevasses. My sled almost fell in one. I decided the conditions were already too dangerous. I need to turn around because the mountain will always be there, but I want to be able to return to it.
So you reached the pole. You've got the record for the longest out there solo ski to the South Pole, but you also came back changed. And I don't mean physically, something shifted in the way that you see the world. How did the South Pole really change you as a person and also an adventurer?
The greatest thing that popped into my head is just the possibility of, wow, what can I do with incremental effort? I remember Bill Gates, the guy who started Microsoft, said that people way overestimate what they can do in a year, but badly underestimate what they can do in 10 years. And that is a truism I have lived with for a long time because I'm starting to write fiction now. I've got a couple books out on Amazon, like The Last Echo. I just released my new one, Shepherd's Code, two days ago, and people are saying, "Oh my gosh, how'd you do all that?" And sales systems, all this other stuff. And I knew that as long as I keep, if you will, getting out my hammer and chisel and chiseling away, eventually I'll get through it. And just like that expedition, every day I'm making miles and making distance, but the game of, hey, this is going to take 3 months to complete. It's so hard to wrap your head around it. But I knew that if I just kept picking away at 10 miles a day or 16 kilometers a day, eventually that adds up. On my expedition across Greenland, my buddy Terry and I, we came to the nearly the summit, crossing over the peak of Greenland, and he was getting really worried. Like, man, we are not making the miles because Greenland, you have to carry a weapon because of polar bears. The snow is way deeper. It's way hotter. The weather's far more unpredictable, and he was really worried. And I said, Terry, just remember, we're just about the peak, and we're going to hit the downside. It's not much faster, but that psychological edge of chiseling away, we'll make it. I mean, we literally got to the end. He was out of food. I had half a day's worth of food. I mean, it was a bit of a hunger game again. We had to thin things out. That's just how it works. I mean, at the time I was 48 and he was, 68. I mean, really old. We're, I haven't been able to verify it, but I believe we're one of the oldest teams ever to do an unsupported crossing of Greenland. And I knew that as long as we kept our attitude right, we worked well together, minded our pleases and thank yous, P's and Q's, we would do okay. It wouldn't be easy. I mean, we ran across polar bear tracks that were fresh. He had he had Raynaud syndrome, so his fingers and hands froze all the time. So literally every day when we geared up, put our tent down, I would have to stand with my back to the wind. And I told him, ski right up to me and I'll open my jacket. And he would put his hands and gloves in my jacket so he could prepare his ski poles. Because I told him, look, if you get injured, we can't make it one or the other. We have to arrive together. And so, yes, I'm standing out there freezing, but I'll be okay. It was not comfortable. And we had to do it multiple times a day because food and bathroom breaks and such. And he felt guilty and said, Terry, this is a team effort. I'm fine. I'm not comfortable, but whatever. I'm not getting hurt. And once he got past that, he accepted this is okay. He said it was like being a 2-year-old. So a man who's a doctor and has all this capability, it's a bit demoralizing. But I said, hey, no, this is what it takes as a team to make it. That's the cost. And I'm perfectly happy. So when I was doing it in Greenland, I had already done it in Antarctica. So it was not a big deal. And I'm not downplaying it, but I knew exactly how it was going to go. I knew we'd be wandering blind through whiteouts. I knew we'd be hungry. I knew there'd be challenges. So it was very palatable for me. But somebody who hasn't pushed themselves to the absolute limit where they're crawling with their fingernails, don't go too far. Trust me.
So, Aaron, what has driven you to seek out these extreme environments?
I enjoyed the experience of being out there where I am 100% disconnected from everything. It's not that I don't like people. I mean, I've been in a long term relationship, got family, friends, and all that. But the ability to go out and be 100% disconnected, no email, no phone call, no news, no nothing is just awesome. I mean, when I was in Antarctica, I didn't even know who won the presidential election in 2012. No clue. So not that it mattered. I mean, my opinion, politics, it doesn't matter. But literally everybody on the planet watches that. And I was probably one of the only people on earth who had no idea, and I wasn't terribly concerned. But that ability to fully disconnect from the modern world and go all pioneer style, where, hey, I'm Magellan, I'm Christopher Columbus, I'm Neil Armstrong, going to some place where people might have been, sure, but I'm out there by myself or with people out there. I love it. I just the disconnect is worth every bit of work.
So, your disconnects are quite extended. Antarctica, we're talking 82 days. Is it difficult returning to normal life? You've had mental isolation, physical isolation. Is it hard getting back?
Absolutely. I was warned by the Antarctic logistics and expedition doctors that I wouldn't be right in my head because I basically did uh, the most effective punishment other than capital punishment for humans is solitary confinement. And I put myself in solitary confinement under a forced labor camp under super severe weather nonstop with no guarantee of success or safety. And I didn't know about that at the time, but boy, when I came back in a big room, I would be claustrophobic. I woke up yelling. I woke up in night sweats. And I was warned, yeah, you better just go to a beach and read 10 books because that effect, it's just being human. That's just how it is. I remember there's this guy who did one of those challenge shows where the show dropped him off on a Pacific island for like 30 days and he had to survive. He came back and he thought it was okay, but his marriage went on the rocks. I mean, it was going bad for him. So he talked and contacted a psychologist, and the psychologist said the same thing of, hey, you just put yourself in solitary confinement, forced labor with no guarantee of survival. You're gonna be messed up for a while. And as soon as he learned that, he's like, oh, and then he was able to be aware of what was going on. So the challenge of that of it impacts you being solo that long in ways you were not aware of until you reintegrate with society. And then, wow. I mean, when you ask people, oh, how long have you been by yourself? Oh, a couple days. Like, no, no, not at home, not this. I mean, like, literally, know people for hundreds and hundreds of miles, and that's it. It's virtually impossible to do that other than somebody sailing across the Pacific or, by themselves. It's unbelievably difficult to do that in the world nowadays.
It certainly is. Jared Gosson's blind athlete, who I had on a past show, who I mentioned earlier, said that we're born with three fears: the fear of loud noises, the fear of falling, and the fear of isolation.
Yeah,
Now,
absolutely.
Aaron, where's the line, and do you have a line between bravery and recklessness?
Oh, yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've attempted Denali 5 times solo, and the National Park Service heavily, heavily discourages it because they've had plenty of fatalities. Every year I've been up there, there's been a fatality, and I look at I came back on one climb. I went out with a guy from Australia. We could watch over each other. The I'm not out there for the adrenaline pump or the reckless. Hey, I'm gonna post this on social sort of thing. That doesn't really do anything for me. Simply because you can't run on adrenaline for 3 months. That maybe works for an hour or maybe two, maybe a day. If you're in the military and in a war zone, but that is not sustainable long term. I go out there and I'm always looking at, okay, how am I performing? How fast am I going? Where's my limit of how much time I have? And I mean, I can push myself crazy hard, but I've pushed myself to the point where I'll catch a cold or feel sick for days. And I know, okay, that's now the line, and I have to adjust for that because all human bodies have limits. And so I know I'm always like this morning, I walked around my neighborhood with a backpack up hills. I'm jogging every other morning. I lift weights, and I'm always keeping myself as fit as I can, but always trying to push. Like, okay, let's run really hard for 2 kilometers and see how it goes. To say, oh, okay, I can see where my limit is. So I either need to build that limit up or accept, hey, that's the line. And at home, whatever, I can feel bad. But if I'm way, way out in the middle of nowhere and I push past that limit, I'm going to be in trouble. That is very hard to deal with.
Aaron, most of us aren't going to ski to the South Pole, but we all face moments where we step forward or we decide to pull back. What lessons do you think from your expeditions can someone apply in their everyday life?
The lesson of realizing that this day shall end, tomorrow you get a whole other chance at doing it. Whether things go badly at your job or on a trip or with your family or whatever, you always can wake up and give it another roll. It's not over. I mean, yeah, I mean, obviously some things are over. You get a divorce or family passes away or whatever. But as long as you keep working at it, you at least have a chance. I mean, people look at, oh, the physical workout or the mental. It's knowing that as long as you keep picking away at it. I mean, I just had a good friend who's a super famous lawyer in America, Jerry Spence. He just passed away yesterday, and I was working with him a week ago on his book. I mean, the man was 96 and still writing books, still, I mean, he was super famous for defending Imelda Marcos from the Philippines. I mean, all these crazy, crazy things. But he told me that as long as you keep chipping away and have that vision of, hey, you could succeed, you at least have a chance.
So, then what's your version of a daily bravery practice?
The daily bravery practice. uh, Getting out and jogging around the neighborhood or getting out and a lot of times I have a truck tire that I attach to my backpack and I tow it around the neighborhood. I mean, it's like one of those CrossFit things, right? It's not necessarily that that's bravery, but everybody in the neighborhood knows me now for better or for worse. And the social, not ostracization, but more of, hey, that guy's a little weird. He's totally cool. But that risk, because deep, deep inside humans is that fear of, hey, if we get kicked out of the tribe and we get, voted off the island, way back when, if that happened, you would probably die. And that has never gone out of humans ever. And people's like, oh, I'm this, I'm that. But if you really get kicked off the island and you're by yourself, life's going to get really hard very quickly. And so the vision of, hey, do something, even if it's not socially rude or destructive or anything like silly like that, of course, but just push yourself and say, hey, I'm going to run a little bit faster. Hey, I'm going to send the email, like you said, Sam, while still thinking of the other's feelings, but knowing that sometimes you got to do the tough things. And I've got a couple pending right now that, oh boy, do I really want to have to deal with that? No, but the sooner I get it off my plate, the better it is. Like right now, last year I started learning to play the piano and violin. I'm now live streaming my practices. Woo, boy. Yeah, the piano kind of sounds okay. The violin, oh my gosh, still terrible. But I'm live streaming that on YouTube to say, hey, I'm completely out there. I mean, I'm a guy in my 50s learning to play violin, and I'm not hiding away. I'm like, look, I want to do this. I want to show you my failure day after day. But my goal is to suck less 1% per day. And as long as I keep doing that, I've gotten better. I mean, it still sounds bad, but I've gotten better.
It's interesting, Aaron. It does take courage to put yourself out there like that. And for me to start this podcast, I'd been wanting to do this for 8 years. And I finally bit the bullet earlier this year. And I just thought, stuff it, I'm going to do this because there's so many great people out there who have amazing stories and we can all learn from them. What is one small act of courage that someone could take tomorrow that you think could change their trajectory?
Make the plan and actually make a physical step of what you want to do next. But you actually you can't be blue sky. It literally has to be a piece of paper and a pen. Not even a pencil, like write it in pen. Get a post-it note. It doesn't matter what it is. And just write it. Maybe it's secret. Maybe you got to hide from your spouse or whatever. And write, I'm going to whatever by, it has to be specific, actionable, and by a fixed date. You might totally miss your date because you don't know 1,000 things. But if you literally take that piece of paper and I'm going to run a half marathon next year by June 26th or whatever, it doesn't even matter. But once you actually write that off physically on paper, and the act of writing it, typing it into your phone doesn't work, writing on your computer doesn't work. You have to get a real piece of paper and a real pen. And once you write that down, your brain will actually treat it as a reality that is possible. As long as it's blue sky in the air, your brain doesn't actually treat it. And there's an actual psychological effect over once you write it down and you can physically hold it in your hand, your brain switches from, yeah, yeah, blah, blah, blah to, ooh, how can I make that happen? And all of a sudden, your brain will, your subconscious, you'll wake up like in the morning or you'll be in the shower, toilet, or whatever. And out of the blue, you'll get the craziest thought of, wow, maybe I can do that. But that is the number one psychological technique to, if you will, hack your mind to make it happen. Write it on paper, stare at it, tape it to your mirror, and have it stare at you. Make it stare at you.
100%. There's a huge amount of scientific research that shows when you write something down, it exits your mind, it's on paper, it cements it, and it makes it more actionable. Because if it stays in your mind, you can always change the story, can't you?
Hmm. Oh, yeah. Easy.
Now, Aaron, we're going to close with the rapid fire five. It's the brave five, I like to call it. It's 5 questions. Answer them fast. Answer them with the first thing that comes to mind. You ready?
Sure.
All right. What's the most unexpected takeaway from your Antarctic expedition?
That I could become an artist and a creator and still be a creator, but instead of technical, do it in a artistic literature and film sort of way.
Oh, fantastic. Now, what was the first emotion you felt when you reached the pole?
Raw excitement. I mean, I literally whooped and jumped up and down, but my feet hurt so bad I really couldn't do it. So I would jump, I would cringe, and I said, I don't care.
All right. One thing you wish you knew before you started.
The impact it would have on my life. I had no idea the places it would take me way beyond what I did.
You weren't ready for it?
No, 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 no. I fully admit I did not have a vision of I mean, I literally had someone in Zermatt, Switzerland. I live in Idaho, United States, literally come up to me. Oh, hey, I've watched your YouTube. I've bought a couple of your books. Thank you so much. I've had people all across America. I mean, I'm not that famous, but the vision of random people that I have changed their life, and I will never know who they are, and that has been just a fully unexpected joy that, hey, I will change somebody's life. I will never know. But somebody literally came up to me randomly in Switzerland. Oh, hey, thank you so much. I appreciate it. That has just floored me.
Wow, that's absolutely amazing. Now, what is a habit or a mindset you think that's made the biggest difference?
Believing that if I use incremental action and tune what's called my reticular activating system in my brain to filter on, hey, this is possible. Tell yourself it's possible. Keep doing it because when you walk through an airport, there's all sorts of chaotic noise. And all of a sudden you hear, Aaron Linsdau, please pick up the white courtesy phone. How did my brain filter all that noise and chaos? Because your brain is trained to do that. And if you train it, hey, this is what I want to focus on, you can make it filter in stuff that will make you succeed.
What's the best advice you've ever received during one of these adventures?
Be willing to cry a lot, accept that you could completely fail. But the most important thing is to come back home alive.
Wow. Now, well, it's amazing. These adventures, people think that, you've got to David Goggins, all of this sort of stuff, but they're hard. There's so much emotion that goes into it, and they break you down, but they also build you up. What does bravery mean to you?
Being willing to put yourself out there and take the risk and know where your line is. And then be willing to slightly put your toe over the line and say, hey, let's see what it feels like in the other side. That bravery, whether you see an attractive person, you go up and talk to them. I mean, ultimately, remember, what's the worst they can do? Take away your birthday? I mean, really, they say no. Oh, well, you didn't have a date on Thursday before. You still don't have a date. Things really haven't changed. Or you ask for a raise at work, or you know what? This job isn't cutting it. I mean, people say, oh, I'd rather stay with the devil I know. Psychologically, yes. But when you get to the end of your life, like my grandfather, you say, man, I wish I would have taken way more risks. Me too. I think I do stuff all the time, but I look back like, good gosh. I mean, what is the worst that could have happened? Really?
Yeah, there's always regret on whichever path you take. You're going to regret something. So just accept that you're going to regret it, but take that brave step.
Yeah, absolutely. Just even incrementally, because people think, oh, that's small. Oh, no, no, no. You don't think a boulder starts rolling down the hill at 50 miles an hour instantly. It takes a while. You got to get that thing moving. But once it starts moving, things develop a momentum of their own. And then apply the social pressure. Post on Facebook, Instagram, hey, I'm doing this. And people ask, oh, how's it going? There's a writer in America. His name's Craig Johnson. Long story, but he wrote a book that became the Longmire series on, I think, Netflix or ABC. And he talked to an officer about some details in his law book, and it's fictional, a sheriff. And then, oh, great. And then 10 years later, he hadn't published it, and he happened to run across that same sheriff, and the sheriff said, hey, how's that book going? And Craig Johnson said, well, I'm still not done with it. And being a Wyoming sheriff, he said, hey, taking a little long, don't you think? And Johnson got so ticked that he went to his literal desk drawer, got that thing out, and now he has a series, he has a TV show, all because he put a little social out of, hey, I'm going to do this. That peer pressure, it works. I promise.
Aaron, thank you so much for showing us that the edge of the map isn't some far off place. It's right where our comfort zone ends. What you've done, trekking to the South Pole solo, skiing across Greenland, braving the extremes, isn't about chasing records. It's about showing the rest of us what's possible when you decide that quitting simply isn't an option. And here's the truth. You don't need Antarctica, ice, endless white horizons to live a bigger life. You just need the courage to take the first step into the unknown and keep going when it gets hard. Aaron, how can people connect with you and follow your adventures?
Sure thing. I've got a couple YouTube channels, but my main one is my first initial last name, A. Linsdau. You can find me on YouTube. I also have an author site, aaronrlinsdau.com. I am very easy to find online. That is not a problem. I've got a show on Amazon you can check out. I've got books. I write fiction books now. So please reach out. I love to hear how stories have touched other people and changed your life. I mean, I love, because otherwise it's a completely black box and I'll never know. So if ever there was a favor to ask, please just reach out and say, hey, thank you so much. or hey, you need to work on this or whatever. I appreciate criticism too.
Fantastic. And I'll obviously put all of those links into the show notes. And remember, no one's born extraordinary. We just get moments to say yes. One day, someone will look at you and ask, why do you think you could do that? And you'll be able to smile because you'll have lived the answer. I'm Sam Penny. This is why you think you could do that. And until next time, keep saying yes to the impossible.